Kia ora everyone, welcome back to our next edition of Econ Talks. Gareth, we've seen the latest retail trade data coming out, showing that again there's a lot of pressure on households at the moment. It seems like it's a lot more difficult at the moment if you're a retailer to actually extract a bit of that cash money out of people's wallets. Just how sort of bad are things looking at the moment?
Yeah, well, it's the eighth quarter in a row that retail sales volumes have declined across the board. This latest quarter down almost 2%, and reversing some sort of slightly better results. I know we've had falls, but there was some slightly better results the previous quarter. But this is a continuation of a trend that's really been in place now since the end of 2021, when we started to see interest rates pushing up, when money wasn't becoming quite so freely available as it had been during that pandemic, and the retail sector, of course, has been under pressure for quite some time. We look at sort of within the sector, it's pretty much every store type that's coming under pressure. So previously at times we've seen it being the durables or the luxuries, those type of things, but given the squeeze on household budgets from higher interest rates and from inflation as well that we've seen previously, which of course has pushed up the cost of living, people are having to cut back on their spending right across the board.
Well, and it is challenging, right? I mean, you look through some of those numbers we've been talking, and we often think as economists of the volume measure. So once you've stripped out some of those price increases that have obviously been quite sizable in the last couple of years, but even the actual dollar value, including inflation, is now falling. And so you're right, it is that sort of higher interest rate impact that's very much continuing to come through. You look at the likes of supermarket spending, very much essential, but also down as well this quarter. So, yeah, reflecting, I think, that much more difficult pathway that retailers in general are going through. People are having to make some big adjustments. I guess, though, this is all in the context where spending is falling at the same time as we've had the strongest population growth since 1946. An extra 146,000 people more in New Zealand at the end of last year than at the end of 2022. So, bang for buck, what's happening at a sort of a per capita or a household level, people are having to pull back quite hard by the looks of this.
Oh, it's massive. I mean, I talked about those sort of fall in retail volumes over the last 8 quarters, but now we've got on a per capita basis, spending is actually, apart from the lockdown quarter in 2020, where of course nobody was able to spend anything, you have to go back to 2016, 2017 to see per capita sales volumes at a lower level. So we haven't just reversed back the good times that we had in terms of spending when interest rates were really low. We've actually taken a few other steps backwards, and it's quite remarkable when you consider that strong population growth. And we've talked about it with our forecasts of businesses, the effect on them being mitigated by more customers coming in the door. But gee, at the retail sector in particular at the moment, yeah, they might have more customers coming in the door, but the fact that everybody is spending so much less seems to be outweighing that. So implications there in terms of sort of economic growth or how much, consumption spending is going to look like in some of the coming quarters. You'd have to still be pretty, cautious or downbeat about prospects within that, especially in the context that, yes, mortgage rates from the banks have been drifting off a little bit over the last month or two, but people are still refixing at rates that are higher than they were last year, and certainly massively higher than they were back in 2022 or 2021 if you're rolling off some of those longer term rates. So there is still more pain to come for households this year. It's not going to be as bad as it was, or not a sort of steeper rise in those debt servicing costs as there was during the last couple of years, but it's probably late this year before you see that sort of average mortgage rate maxing out. And until that occurs, retail is going to remain under considerable pressure.
And that sort of highlights, right, that you're going to continue to see throughout 2024, in my mind, that just restrained, subdued level of economic activity. Certainly once you take into account population growth, growth is going to look pretty sad, if not continuously sort of negative. The headline numbers might look okay, but that's probably about it as well. They're going to be okay rather than anything else. We were already sort of picking that the first quarter, the GDP figures for the December quarter were going to be a bit weak, a bit sluggish, and looking through these numbers, it sort of continues to tie in with that sort of view that, again, households are doing it a lot tougher, and despite that higher migration, it's still coming through. I think, again, looking through those figures, it means that, like you say, it's the entire sector. It's not just a few stores here and there, but it's sort of everyone who's going, man, that penny pinching is really coming forward. So will restrain growth this year, will sort of make it a tougher environment. And for households, I think, these sort of numbers, particularly on that per capita basis, do highlight how difficult some of those decisions are now becoming. We're not seeing huge numbers of mortgagee sales or anything else, so people are still able to just keep their head above water, but it's not by much. And you look at the recent child poverty statistics and similar, and it just highlights that, again, there are a lot of people that are doing it tough. They are struggling. There's sort of not nearly as much upside as we go forward. We'll continue to assess how those retail trade figures evolve throughout 2024, how that spending goes, and how the likes of interest rates, high inflation, and population all sort of mix and mingle together, and how that's going to affect economic activity on one of our future editions of Econ Talks.